The red moons hung low over the palace towers. Soft winds blew through the open windows of the golden hall, but inside there was no peace. Leary stood in front of the tall mirror, dressed in a shining silver gown, her face pale and her heart full of fear. She was only 19 cycles old, barely an adult by her people's measure. Yet tonight, she was being forced to marry a warlord 3 times her age. He was cruel, powerful, and already had 4 wives, all broken and silent. She would become the 5th. Her hands shook as servants tied the metal belt around her waist, a symbol of ownership, not love. No one asked her how she felt. No one cared. To them, she was just a trade, a gift from her father to keep peace between clans. Leary looked out the window. The stars above whispered freedom. Could she escape? Could she really run? She waited, heart racing, until the guards outside her door switched shifts. That was the moment she had planned. She grabbed a hidden cloak from under her bed, tore off the heavy gown, and covered herself in gray fabric. She slipped through the hallways like a shadow, careful not to make a sound. One wrong step, and she would be caught, punished, maybe even killed, at the edge of the palace wall. She climbed down a rough drain pipe, her feet slipping, hands bleeding from the sharp edges. Her breath came fast, and her heart beat louder than the wind, but she didn't stop. She landed in the garden below and ran like the sky was falling. Her transport pod was hidden behind the old temple. Ruins. She had stolen the key code from her father's office weeks ago. Her plan was risky, maybe foolish, but better to die running than live as a slave bride. The pod's engine sputtered as it powered on. She didn't wait, didn't look back. She entered Earth's coordinates. She had seen it once in a trader's book. A strange blue world far from warlords and collars. A place where maybe, just maybe, she could start over. The pod shook violently as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Flames licked the window. Alarms screamed, and Leary prayed silently. She didn't care where she landed, just that she survived. She crashed on a rainy street just outside a human city. Steam rose from the broken pod, and cars sped past, honking in fear. Leary crawled out, her body weak, her cloak soaked, her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees on the wet road. Then she saw it. A bright yellow machine with a glowing top light came to a sudden stop. It was a human taxi. A man stepped out, tall, broad, with tired eyes and an umbrella in his hand. He looked at her with confusion, but not fear. She tried to speak, but her voice was dry and broken. He moved closer, slowly, like he didn't want to scare her. "You okay?" he asked softly. Leary didn't understand the words, but his tone was kind. Her people had warned her about humans, violent, selfish, dangerous, but this man didn't look like that. She pointed to the sky and whispered, "No, go back." The man nodded, as if he understood something deeper. He opened the back door of his taxi and motioned for her to get in. For a moment, she hesitated. What if this was another trap? What if Earth was no different from her home? But the cold rain stung her skin, and the pain in her legs was too much. She climbed into the warm car, shaking, eyes wide. The man turned the heat on, handed her a small blanket from the front seat, and started to drive. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. He just drove outside. The city lights flickered through the rain. Inside the taxi, Leary curled up in the corner, watching him. She didn't know his name or where he was taking her, but something in her chest felt light, safe for the first time. Far above, in the stars she once called home. Her escape had already been discovered. A warship was being prepared. The warlord wanted his bride back. But, on Earth, inside one quiet yellow taxi, a journey had begun. One that would change both their lives forever. Asterisk, the taxi rolled through the wet streets of the city. The rain was still falling, but softer now. Inside the warm car, Leary sat in silence, wrapped in a thin blanket, her eyes watching everything. She didn't understand this world, not yet. But she knew one thing: this human hadn't hurt her. He had helped her. The man's name was Mike. He drove the night shift, picking up drunk people, lost tourists, and lonely souls. He had seen a lot of strange things, but nothing like this girl. She wasn't just a runaway. Her skin had a light shimmer under the car's lamp, and her eyes, silver and bright, were not from Earth. Still, Mike didn't panic. She looked scared, tired, and way too young to be in trouble like this. Mike glanced at her through the mirror. She was shaking, more from fear than cold. He didn't know what to say, so he asked gently, "Where do you need to go?" She looked up, confused, not understanding. She pointed at herself and said softly, "Leary." Mike nodded. "Leary, okay." He tapped his chest. "Mike." She blinked slowly, trying to repeat, "Mick." He smiled a little. Close enough. He wanted to ask more questions, but now wasn't the time. She was clearly on the run. And he didn't want to scare her away, instead of dropping her at a shelter or police station. Mike made a quick decision. He turned toward a part of the city few people knew, an old garage owned by his sister, Emma. She used it for fixing bikes and hiding from her past. Emma didn't ask questions, and that's what Mike needed right now. He called her on the way. "I need a favor," he said. Emma yawned. "Middle of the night, Mike." "It's important, Em," he said. "She's not from around here." When they arrived, Emma was waiting at the garage door, wearing a long coat and boots. She took one look at Leary and raised her eyebrows. "She's not local," Emma whispered. Mike nodded. "Can she stay for a night or two?" "Just until I figure things out." Emma hesitated, but nodded slowly. Inside the garage, it was warm and dry. Old cushions, blankets, and a few supplies made it feel like a hidden room. Leary sat quietly while Emma handed her a bowl of warm soup. She sniffed it, then tasted carefully, her eyes lighting up with surprise. "Okay," Emma said, crossing her arms. "What did you bring into my life this time?" Mike ran a hand through his wet hair. "I think she's an alien." Emma laughed once, then saw the serious look on his face. "Oh no," she said. "You're serious." He explained what he knew, which wasn't much. The crash, the strange pod, the fear in Leary's eyes. Emma looked at the girl again, this time with less doubt. "She doesn't look dangerous," she admitted. "But someone will come looking." Leary, sitting nearby, suddenly whispered, "No, go back." Both humans turned to her. Mike walked closer and kneeled down. "Who's after you?" he asked slowly. Leary pressed a hand to her chest and said, "Bad man, make merry." Mike's jaw tightened. "Someone tried to force you to marry?" he asked, his voice calm but tense. She nodded, then pointed to the stars through the small window. "Big ship hunters," she said, her voice trembling. "Coming." Mike looked at Emma. "Great," Emma whispered. "You picked up a princess." With a bounty on her head, Mike stood up, breathing slowly. "I'm not letting anyone take her back," he said. "Not after what she ran from." That night, while Leary slept on the couch with a blanket wrapped around her tightly, Mike sat in the corner, thinking hard. He had always lived a quiet life, driving at night, minding his own business. He didn't want trouble. But now, trouble had found him in the form of a scared alien girl who trusted him. He looked at her peaceful face as she slept. He knew she had risked everything. And he knew something else he couldn't turn away, outside, in the dark skies. Above Earth, a signal blinked red on a hidden satellite. A hunter ship from Leary's homeworld had entered orbit. Her escape had triggered alarms, and the warlord's best trackers had already locked onto her trail, but they didn't know she had found a human, and they didn't know he was ready to fight back. In the early morning, the city streets were quiet, shops were still closed, and fog rolled between the buildings. But high above, floating in the clouds, an alien drone hovered silently. It scanned everything's faces, heat signatures, even the smallest movement. The drone belonged to the warlord's hunters. They were trained to track runaways, especially high-value targets like Leary. They didn't speak much. They didn't show mercy. They only followed orders. Inside the garage, Leary woke up with a gasp. She sat up on the old couch, breathing fast. Mike rushed over. "You okay?" She touched her neck, her skin cold with fear. "Hunters," she whispered. "I feel them." Mike looked out the window, but saw nothing. Still, he didn't doubt her. He grabbed his phone and called Emma, who was upstairs. "We need to move," he said. Now Emma came down with a small bag, already guessing something bad had started. "You think they're here?" she asked. "I don't think," Mike said, looking at Leary's shaking hands. "She knows." They packed quickly. No time for plans. Mike led Leary out the back door and into an alley. His old car was parked there, an older model. No GPS, no trackers. That made it perfect. They drove fast, heading toward an abandoned part of the city. Old factories, train yards, and buildings no one cared about anymore. It was a place where people disappeared. Dan stayed disappeared. Mike knew some of it from his younger days when he wasn't. So clean, Leary stayed quiet, her eyes locked on the sky. Mike noticed her glancing at her arm again and again. "What's wrong?" he asked. She pointed to a small mark under her skin, glowing faintly. "Tracker," she said, "inside." Mike's heart dropped. "Are you saying they can find you because of that?" Leary nodded slowly. He pulled the car over in an alley and turned off the engine. "We have to get that thing out," he said. "I'm no doctor," Emma warned. "We could hurt her." Mike looked at Leary. "We don't have time," he said. "If they find us, we're all dead." They found a small workshop nearby. Dusty and dark, inside were old tools, a flashlight, and a metal table. Leary lay down on it without a word. She trusted him, even if it hurt. Mike sterilized the tools the best he could. Emma held Leary's hand while Mike worked. He opened the skin just enough to reach the small chip. Leary bit her lip, trying not to scream. Blood ran down her arm, and Mike's hands were shaking. But he found the device cold, hard, and blinking. He pulled it out, smashed it under a wrench, and threw the pieces down the drain. Leary sat up slowly, breathing heavy. "Gone?" she asked. Mike nodded. "Gone, but outside." The drone had already passed over the area. It had scanned the heat signatures inside the building. It had seen 3 figures, one of them matching Leary's shape and body type, and it had sent a signal to the hunter ship above. In the sky, the ship's doors opened, and a hunter dropped down, tall, armored, silent. It moved like a shadow between the buildings, its eyes glowing red with one purpose: find and return the runaway bride. Inside the workshop, Leary suddenly stood up. She turned toward the door, her eyes wide. "He's here," she whispered. One of them, Mike, grabbed a metal pipe, the only weapon nearby. Emma looked around for something to fight with. They heard footsteps outside, slow, heavy, getting closer. The door burst open, and the hunter stepped in. Its armor reflected the light, and its long arms ended in sharp blades. Mike stood in front of Leary, ready to die if he had to. But Leary stepped beside him, eyes glowing now. With alien fire, she spoke in her own language, fast and angry. The hunter paused, confused by her defiance. Then Leary moved, grabbing a sharp tool and slashing across its face. Sparks flew, and the hunter stumbled back. Mike swung his pipe and hit the back of its head. The hunter crashed into a pile of metal shelves. Emma threw a bucket of oil at its eyes, blinding it for a moment. "Run!" Mike shouted. They ran through the back exit into the train yard. Leary was faster now, stronger too. She was no longer just running. She was fighting for her future. Behind them, the hunter got up slowly. It was hurt, but not finished. and more. "We're coming." The hunt had truly begun. The train yard was dark and quiet. Old tracks twisted through tall grass, and rusted trains stood like metal giants. Mike, Leary, and Emma ducked behind one of the boxcars, breathing fast. Behind them, the hunter was still moving, slow but steady. Leary pressed a hand to her arm, the place where the tracker had been. Blood still leaked from the wound, but her focus was elsewhere. She could feel more hunters coming. Their minds reached out in waves. "Not words, but fear. We need a better place," Mike whispered. Emma nodded. "I know a spot." They helped Leary up and followed Emma through the maze of old trains. At the far end of the yard was a forgotten train control room. Emma had used it once to hide stolen parts years ago. No cameras, no signals, just thick walls and silence. Inside, it was dusty and full of broken screens, but it was hidden, and for now, that was all they needed. Mike cleaned Leary's arm again, wrapping it tightly in cloth. She winced, but didn't cry. "You were brave," he said, "back there." Leary looked up at him and said softly, "I'm not afraid. Not with you, Mike." Didn't know what to say to that. His heart beat faster, but not from fear. This girl, from a world so far away, trusted him, and that meant something. Emma paced the room. "Checking the doors and windows, we need to do more than just run," she said. "They'll keep finding us." Leary looked at her, then pointed to her chest. "Inside," she said, "more tech." Mike frowned. "What do you mean?" Leary tapped her chest and said, "Binding implant, control chip." Emma cursed. "So even without the tracker, they can still pull you back." Leary nodded. "Pain signal. If I go too far," Mike stared at her. "That's why you were weak." "When we left the city," she nodded again. Eyes heavy, Mike stood up, fists tight. "I'm getting it out." Emma looked at him like he was insane. "You're not a surgeon," she said. "You could kill her." Mike didn't blink. "If we don't, they'll control her again." He turned to Leary. "Do you want it gone?" She looked into his eyes, full of trust, and said, "Yes." They gathered what they could. Old tools, a flashlight, water, clean cloth, and a sharp knife. Leary lay back on a table made of crates and metal sheets. Her skin glowed faintly under the beam of the flashlight. Mike washed his hands, breathing slowly. He'd never done anything like this before, but he had steady hands, and, more importantly, reason. Emma stood beside Leary, holding her hand. "You squeeze if it's too much," she said. Leary nodded, her lips tight, her breath slow. Mike made a careful cut near her upper chest. Leary gasped but stayed still. Blood rose fast, but he wiped it away quickly, searching for the chip. The metal was deep, almost fused into the bone. He worked carefully, cutting away just enough to reach it. Leary whimpered once, and Emma whispered calming words. Then Mike saw a black square, pulsing like a tiny heart. He reached in with tweezers and pulled. Leary arched her back in pain, but didn't scream. The chip came loose, buzzing like an insect. Mike dropped it into a tin and smashed it with a wrench. Sparks flew, and the chip went dark. Leary collapsed into Emma's arms, sweating, her body shaking. But she smiled. "Free," she whispered. "I feel free." Mike stitched the wound as best as he could. Not perfect, but enough to stop the bleeding. Then he sank into a chair, exhausted. "I hope that was the last of it," he said. But it wasn't. Outside, in the shadows, more hunters had landed. They moved with speed and silence, scanning the area. One found the broken tracker chip in the train yard and growled in anger. The leader, larger and more armored than the rest, raised a hand. He pointed toward the control room. He could feel her barely but enough. Inside, Leary rested, eyes closed. Mike leaned against the wall, holding a metal rod just in case. Emma checked the window again. She froze, then whispered, "They found us." Mike stood up, heart pounding. How many? Too many, she said. 4, maybe 5. Leary opened her eyes, weak but alert. We can't run, she said. They fast. Mike nodded. Then we fight. He handed Emma a metal pipe and picked up a sharp tool himself. We make noise, we lead them into the traps, he said. Emma raised an eyebrow. What traps? The ones we build right now, he said, eyes burning with purpose. They moved quickly, placing sharp metal pieces at doorways, setting up wires across halls. Old batteries were connected to lights ready to blind the first one who entered. Leary sat up, holding a long rod, ready to defend herself as the first hunter approached. The lights flickered, the door creaked, and metal boots stepped inside. The battle for freedom was about to begin. The first hunter stepped into the control room. Lights flashed, and a metal wire wrapped around its legs. It fell hard, hitting the floor with a crash. Mike swung a metal bar down with all his strength. Sparks flew as the hunter twitched, stunned, but more were coming. Emma threw a metal pipe through a side window, smashing it out the back. She shouted. Leary grabbed her weapon and limped beside Mike. Her wounds still hurt, but she wouldn't stop. She had come too far to be captured now. They ran into the train yard again, this time heading toward an old storm drain hidden behind broken tracks. Mike remembered it from his youth, a tunnel system below the city. No one used it anymore, not humans, not aliens. He pulled open the heavy grate and Emma climbed in first. Leary followed, her breathing quick. Mike dropped in last. Pulling the cover closed above them, inside it was dark, wet, and smelled like rust and dirt. But they were alive, and for now they were hidden. They moved through the tunnels slowly. Using an old flashlight that flickered weakly, water dripped from the ceiling, and rats scattered as they passed. Leary leaned against Mike. Weak but steady, Emma led the way, her steps careful after what felt like hours. They reached a small, dry space, an old maintenance room. It was empty, except for a broken bench, a shelf, and some blankets someone had left long ago. Mike helped Leary sit, and Emma gave her water. Leary sipped slowly, her hands still shaking. We're safer now, Mike said. They won't find us down here. Emma nodded, but we can't stay forever. Leary looked around, then at Mike. I stay with you, she said softly. You helped me. Mike smiled, though tired. You're not alone anymore, he said. They lit a small fire using dry trash and old wires. The soft glow made the room feel warmer, almost human for the first time in days. They could breathe, they weren't running. Not for now. Leary curled up near the fire, her head resting on a folded cloth. Emma watched her with a gentle gaze. She's stronger than I thought, she whispered. Mike nodded. She's more than strong. Later that night, Mike sat beside Leary. She was awake, staring at the flame. He noticed how the fire reflected in her silver eyes. She looked like someone from another world, but also someone who had suffered just like anyone else. Leary spoke softly, her words broken but clear. On my world, they say girls belong to men. Mike frowned. That's not right. They say we are gifts, she said, not people. Mike looked at her. You're not a gift. Leary, you're a person. You're free now. She touched her bandaged wound and smiled a little. First time I feel free. They sat in silence for a moment, the fire crackling between them. Then Leary reached out and touched Mike's hand. I trust you, she whispered. Mike's heart beat louder in his chest. He didn't say anything, but he gently squeezed her hand back. Emma returned with some food cans she had stored underground years ago. They shared a small meal, sitting like a strange family in a forgotten room outside the tunnels. The hunters searched the city. They scanned buildings, followed heat trails, and questioned anyone who had seen the crash. But the scent was growing cold. and the warlord above was growing impatient. He sent a message to the lead hunter: "Bring her back or do not return at all." Down below, Leary was healing. Her body rested, but her mind grew sharper. She asked Mike questions now about Earth, about people, about life without fear. He showed her how to light a fire, how to use a small radio, how to say new words. She learned fast. Eager to understand this new world, Emma watched them with quiet eyes. She saw what was forming between them. It wasn't just kindness. It was something deeper, something rare one night. As the rain poured above and water ran through the lower tunnels, Mike sat beside Leary again. "You'll need a new identity," he said. "A name they don't know." Leary thought for a moment. "Liana," she said softly. "I like it." Mike smiled. "Liana, it is." And just like that, she began to leave her old life behind. The days in the tunnels passed slowly. Each hour brought both fear and hope. But Mike knew they couldn't hide forever, so he began to prepare. Leary now, calling herself Liana, was healing quickly. Her wound had closed, and the glow in her skin was brighter now. She wasn't the same girl who had fallen from the sky. She was becoming stronger, faster, sharper. Mike had once served in Earth's military before he became a taxi driver. He had learned how to survive, how to fight, and how to defend. Now, he passed that knowledge on to her. In an open space of the tunnels, far from the sleeping area, Mike set up a training spot. He drew targets on the walls, using chalk and tied old wires between pipes to build traps. He showed Liana how to use a metal rod as a weapon. She copied his movements exactly, her eyes full of focus. Emma brought down an old backpack filled with tools, wires, and power cells. "I used to build traps when I was a kid," she said. Smiling, "Let's give these hunters a surprise." Liana trained every day. She learned how to move without making a sound, how to swing with force, not fear, and how to stand tall even when shaking inside. At night, she sat beside Mike, asking, "More questions? Why did you help me?" She asked one evening. Mike paused before answering. "Because no one helped me when I needed it," he said softly. "And because I saw you were worth saving." Liana looked away, hiding the warmth in her face. She wasn't used to kindness, but now she wanted to protect it. News from above reached them through Emma's small radio. The city was being searched again. People reported strange figures in black armor moving through the night. The warlord's hunters were growing more aggressive. Mike decided it was time. "We can't wait for them to find us," he said. "We fight first." Emma raised an eyebrow. "You want to take the fight to them?" Mike nodded. "They think we're weak, that we'll run again. But now, we know the tunnels. We have traps, and we have each other." Liana stepped forward, holding her rod like a blade. "I fight too," she said. "This time, I don't run." They began building their battlefield. Mike and Emma placed electric wires across tight paths. They hung broken metal to fall like knives when triggered. They used batteries to power sharp sparks hidden under shallow water. Liana mapped out the area using a small scanner from her escape pod. She remembered how the hunters moved, where they might search. She drew red marks for danger and green circles for traps. The tunnels became a maze of defense. Each corner held something deadly. And at the center, Liana waited. She dressed in dark cloth, her face marked with stripes of ash. Mike gave her his old army jacket. Too big for her, but strong, Emma armed herself with a short blade and a hammer. They were ready, that night. The hunters entered the tunnel, 3 of them tall. Fast, silent. Their armor was dark, their eyes glowing red. They followed the signal from the control chip's last spark. And they moved like predators. The first one stepped into a wire trap. It triggered a gas spark, blasting flames into the hallway. The hunter screamed, armor burning. The second leaped forward, only to fall into a hidden pit filled with sharp metal rods. The third hunter advanced carefully. Now aware of the danger, he moved slowly, scanning with a red light. But Liana was faster. She appeared from the shadows and struck his leg with a loud crack. He turned to slash, but Emma tackled him from the side. Mike charged in, hitting him with a heavy pipe. The fight was hard, brutal, close. The hunter knocked Mike down and slammed Emma against a wall. But Liana jumped onto his back, driving her. Rod into his neck joint, the armor sparked, and the hunter fell with a loud metallic thud. Silence returned. The three hunters lay still. Smoke rising from their bodies. Mike stood up slowly, wiping blood from his forehead. Emma groaned but smiled. That was wild. Liana was breathing hard, but her hands were steady. "We did it," she said. Mike looked at her with pride. "Yes, we did." They dragged the hunter bodies into the deep part of the tunnel, hiding them under rubble. No signals. Would leave this place now, but they all knew the warlord wouldn't stop. Still, something had changed. They had fought back and won. And for the first time Liana felt strong, not just free, but powerful. Weeks passed since the fight in the tunnels. The hunters were gone. Their ship had left Earth orbit. The warlord believed his runaway bride was dead. No more signals, no more traces. He moved on to conquer other worlds, but under Earth's soil. Deep in the forgotten tunnels, now Liana was alive. She walked with more confidence. Her wounds had healed. And her eyes no longer darted with fear. She had trained with Mike every morning, learning more than just survival. She learned about strength, about trust, and about choosing her own path. Emma used her old contacts to get them fake IDs and new clothes. The three of them left the tunnels together. Just before sunrise, the city above was quiet, calm. No one looked their way to the world. They were just normal people. They traveled far past cities, past noise, into dry, open lands. There, in a peaceful desert town, they found what they were looking for. A place with no questions. No hunters, no past. Mike bought a small house with the last of his savings. An old taxi stood outside, dusty. But strong, he cleaned it, painted it, and returned to what he knew: driving people who needed help getting somewhere. Liana helped him, not just with the taxi, but with everything. She kept the books, washed the windows, and slowly started to smile more each day. She wore jeans now, soft earth clothes, her long hair tied up in a braid. Her silver eyes still glowed, but now they glowed with life, not fear. She chose a last name for herself, Liana Ray. No one on Earth knew who she had been before. But here, she was free to be anything she wanted. At night, Mike and Liana sat on the porch. Watching the stars, she would point to constellations and name them in her language. Mike would tell her stories about Earth's heroes and ancient myths. "You're one of those," he said one evening. She tilted her head. "One of what?" "A hero," Mike said. "You faced everything, and you still chose freedom." Liana looked down, her fingers curling around his. "I didn't do it alone," she whispered. Emma visited often, sometimes staying for a week. She brought tools, laughter, and stories about her past. Sometimes she joked, "If aliens keep falling in love with humans, I might open a dating service." Liana always blushed. But she didn't deny it anymore. One evening, Liana stood in front of the old taxi. She touched the metal gently, remembering that rainy night. "That's where it started," she said. "My freedom." Mike stepped beside her. "I just opened the door. You walked in." She smiled, her eyes bright. "And I'll never leave." That night, she gave him something: smaller necklace she had hidden during her escape. It was made of tiny glowing crystals. The last thing she had from her homeworld. "I want you to have it," she said, "so you always remember me." Mike took it slowly, holding it with care. "I could never forget you," he said, "even without this." They didn't need big words or promises under the stars. Their bond was already sealed through pain, trust, and shared survival. Liana started writing too. She wrote her story in a notebook Emma had given her. At first, it was short words, simple thoughts, but each day, her English grew better. And her story became clearer. She wanted to help others maybe one day speak for those who couldn't, not just alien girls, but anyone who had been silenced. She wrote about fear, about courage, and about the man who gave her a second chance. People in the desert town grew fond of her. They called her the quiet girl with glowing eyes. She helped old women carry groceries, played with local kids, and brought kindness wherever she walked. One afternoon, a little girl asked her, "Are you a princess?" Liana laughed softly and said, "No, I'm just someone who ran away." The girl blinked. "Why?" Liana smiled. "To find something better?" The child looked confused. "Did you find it?" Liana looked over at Mike, who stood by the taxi. Wiping dust from the hood, she nodded slowly. "Yes," she said. "I found home." And so her story didn't end with escape or survival. It ended with choice, with healing, and with love. She wasn't Leary the alien bride anymore. She was Liana Ray, a girl who rewrote her destiny with her own hands. And every time Mike opened the door of that taxi, she remembered freedom sometimes begins with a ride, and sometimes with a human kind enough to stop.